Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we've got a big one. We're going to be talking about the newest record from Justin Timberlake called Man of the Woods. It's been a while since I've seen a backlash against a pop artist this sudden, this intense, as if folks have been waiting for just the right target for their long knives. I mean, with Taylor Swift and Reputation, there was some of it, but the snake heel turn that first exploded in 2016 and the meltdown took over a year and a half to truly coalesce. With Justin Timberlake, with this combined double whammy of his album release and a second Super Bowl performance, it seemed like all the cultural backlash was finally coming to a head, and I'm already sick of it. Partially because it feels like I'm one of the few who has been taking notes surrounding the relative complexity of Justin Timberlake's issues, and the level of historical revisionism going on really does not sit well with me, especially among some critics. What? You're only now taking issue with the fact that the production on Justify was originally intended for Michael Jackson, and how Justin Timberlake has been relatively remorseless in building a lot of his stage persona in pop wholesale from Michael Jackson and Prince and other better artists, even having the nerve to diss them. What? You're only now angry about how Justin Timberlake seemingly got away scot-free with that stunt at the 2004 Super Bowl, where Janet Jackson's career was shattered? What? You're only now realizing that so much of Justin Timberlake's professional career has been this sort of audacious, ego-driven, style over substance, I can't believe how much I'm getting away with this act, that translates to his albums being really kind of overblown, self-aggrandizing, and more sloppily written than anybody dared say? What? Did you all forget that he wrote Carry Out back in 2009, 2010? But you know what? Here's the thing. I get it. The 2000s, they were a weird and twisted decade that allowed Justin Timberlake's embrace of futuristic artificiality to flourish, and it certainly helped that he was backed up by some of the best producers of that time, with the Neptunes and Timbaland. It was so easy to throw Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson and Prince under the bus, especially when all of whom they were straining under the weight of their own legacies with music that increasingly didn't measure up. I don't like to say it, but again, it's kind of true. I heard those albums, all in the face of that veneer, to which, to his credit, Justin Timberlake could carry almost on ego and raw talent alone. And even in 2013, with his two 2020 Experience records, he still got the critical acclaim by many of the folks who are now lining up to crucify him. And if you go back to both of my reviews, I didn't really share that critical acclaim because I've never really been a Justin Timberlake fan at any point. Sure, he was a decent enough pop star. It's more Backstreet Boys than NSYNC, but moving past that, I don't think that all of his success is unwarranted, but it's why so much of the historical revisionism here bothers the hell out of me. Don't act like you guys weren't propping up the institutions that allowed Justin Timberlake to get away with as much as he did, especially in 2013, where you let a Justin Timberlake ripoff named Robin Thicke dominate the charts with Blurred Lines. Or hell, go to last year, where it seemed like the quickest way to blow up as a trap rapper is to have sexual assault cases under your belt. And yet, just like with Robin Thicke and Paula, when it looked like Justin Timberlake was going to be exposing a more personal side of himself on Man of the Woods, everybody saw this as the moment of vulnerability to really pounce and go in, especially if there was any sign that the music might have slipped in quality. Now look, Justin Timberlake has not helped himself here. The fact that he was tone deaf enough to think he could get away with a Prince hologram and then a projection alongside him at the halftime show, that's gross and offensive on a number of levels, and as a Prince fan, that just offends me on a primal level. But currently Man of the Woods has a lower Metacritic score than Maroon 5's Red Pill Blues, and if that's not a sign that backlash has flown off the rails, I don't know what is. Especially as I didn't think Filthy or Supplies were that bad. But okay, maybe like Paula, it was that bad, and Justin Timberlake deserved all the backlash, so what did we get on Man of the Woods? Well, it's better than Paula, better than Red Pill Blues. But really, the more listens I gave to Man of the Woods, the more I'm just convinced that while the backlash is overblown, Justin Timberlake really brought a ton of this on himself for a record that just isn't as layered, compelling, or portentous as it was marketed. If it was released by anybody else at a different time, it'd be branded as a mostly inoffensive or even passable slap of acoustic-heavy R&B, feeling underwritten and too long, but with enough sincerity to have some charm to it. But by trying to sell it as anything more than that, again, that was probably Justin Timberlake's biggest mistake going into this project. Granted, there was a certain amount of audacity in how this record has been pushed, especially with the singles, because for as twisted and warped as Filthy is with the contorting synth and bass line, or the ominous knock of Supplies, which despite my problems with it, and the ad-libs and the lack of general greater atmosphere, it just continues to get better with every listen for me. I know it's not a very good song, I accept that, but yeah, it's grown on me. But really, this record is a lot less challenging than those singles would appear. If you dig into the production, Justin Timberlake has described this record as Americana with 808s. And while I don't entirely agree, I at least see what he was trying to do, taking a foundation of acoustic layers and pairing them with the dense percussion and blubbery bass lines that have lingered on from his 2000s R&B heyday. It's not quite as stiff as the 2020 experiences were. And you know what? I'll go a step further and say that more often than not, I can kind of hear it working. If you're drawing a comparison to the acoustic pop that can barely call itself country, like Sam Hunt or Old Dominion or Walker Hayes, or maybe even Andy Grammer, it's often way too staccato and chopping and lacking significant grooves, something that Justin Timberlake leans into. There are grooves on this album. And hell, with songs like Higher Higher or Montana, I can see the sound kind of working. The bass lines are developed, the funkier edge is a little more sharpened, and it's territory that feels genuinely fresh. Hell, I take that over the quick strumming, the weird sandy stutters, or the out-of-nowhere harmonica breakdown on, say, Wave or Midnight Summer Jam, or that atonal squeal that's tacked onto a passable melodic hook on the title track, or just the undercooked crooning of Morning Light or Breeze Off the Pond. But you know what? It ties into my first big significant problem with the instrumentation on this project. The production is way too damn clean for what Justin Timberlake is trying to do. Yeah, the acoustic guitars, they have significant warmth, but the busier grooves from Timbaland and the Neptunes, they're polished within an inch of their lives, which isn't exactly a great option when you're trying to sound rootsy or more organic or more atmospheric. And you can clearly tell with the interludes that he's trying to do that. And this only becomes more pronounced when this record tilts closer towards country or Americana. Again, the heavily multi-tracked hooks do make Justin Timberlake's increasingly frail-sounding falsetto workable, and there are melodic progressions on Sauce and the hard stuff, and a collaboration with Chris Stapleton on Say Something that leans towards that country melodic progression. But those melodies, they demand a low end that feels more cohesive with the rest of the acoustic guitars, not one with all the clicks, whirs, and ad-libs that feel imported from your average modern-day trap song or an R&B track from the 2000s, especially when Timberlake decides to bring in backing vocals that owe more to doo-wop than they do Migos or anything in country. Or you know what, let's go to Sauce. Not the first time that Justin Timberlake tries to bring in a rougher sound with the guitars and the buzziness, but they just don't mesh well with the rest of the mix, especially against his delivery. But that's also indicative of Justin Timberlake himself on the microphone. As you can tell, he's kind of flip-flopping between the funky R&B in which he's comfortable, the boy band crooning of his roots, there was a lot of that on this project, and some attempts to sound a little more soulful and ragged that, look, with his vocal tone, he just can't pull off. Look, Mirrors was the closest attempt in 5 years ago, and you tried, and even this is an album where you're opposite Chris Stapleton, who even mixed a little lower, and him trying to play for subtlety, he blows Justin Timberlake out of the water. This is just not a lane where Timberlake is good. He fares a little better opposite Alicia Keys on Morning Light, but you could tell that she was really phoning that one in, a ballad that feels utterly tepid, sadly like many of the emotional sentiments that are carried across a lot of these songs. It's just a little bit too languid for its own good. And this is where we're gonna have to talk about the lyrics, and arguably what will hold this record back the most. And really, they don't have to. Again, breaking this down to the basics, these are mostly an interchangeable, occasionally goofy, but tolerable set of hookup and sex jams. Not really delivered with a lot of intensity, but Justin Timberlake has enough charisma to skate by on it. I can see them having an audience a little older that might want to lean into this. The problem is that this record is framing itself as having so much more meaning and importance, highlighting Justin Timberlake as the hyper-masculine man of the woods that feels profoundly undercooked. Half because he can't really sell what someone would think of a man of the woods to be, and half because it's rooted in the same ego trip that has characterized all of his records. How else can you explain the title track where you get the line, "If I take it too far, that's okay because, you know, I hear the making up's fun"? Why he thinks it's a line that will click for pop audiences in 2018 is utterly beyond me. Or take the interlude from his wife Jessica Biel on Hers, which ends with how she feels like she's his because she's wearing his shirt. It's a cute sentiment, she sells it well, the production behind it's really nice, but the language choice reflects a certain myopia coming from Justin Timberlake. Or take the hard stuff where he tries to play the working class anthem and lecture folks about playing the lottery when they shouldn't. And again, I get the sentiment. The presentation and projection, though, that he's attempting with this rootsier vibe, it feels so disconnected from the realities of their experiences. He's not asking why or really engaging. And that gets really distracting when you have songs like Say Something that seem to demand that he speak up, even acknowledge that it might be more important for him just to say nothing and listen, except he just has to say something. Or go to Young Man, where he's talking about his son and how he should learn to stand up for something. But that's all painfully nebulous, all something that might matter a great deal, but there's nothing even abstract to add weight to it. There's no detail, especially with all these fragmented interludes that make nearly all these tracks run long for no discernible reason. And yeah, I get that pop doesn't need to make significant statements, but you get the impression Justin Timberlake was certainly trying to make a statement, and thus it just feels vague and thin. If anything, just reinforcing the idea of Justin Timberlake as this image of the man of the woods, more brand than actual substance. And here's why it just doesn't connect for me. It ties to one of the songs I actually kind of like, Flannel. It's written from the perspective of his stepfather to Justin Timberlake, and for a second you get a kind of sweet and heartfelt moment that actually has some specifics that don't feel either painfully undercooked or self-serving or just stupid. Like I was just getting high in a canoe on breeze off the pond, like that's a good idea. And yet, all throughout Flannel, the more prominent Flannel that sprung to mind was that of Anthony Fantano, and the fact that a meme managed to overpower any sort of emotional resonance that Justin Timberlake was trying to sell, that's a bad sign for him on this album. And at the end of the day, if this record cut a third of its runtime and streamlined to focus more on the acoustic, groove-heavy sex jams, and you know what, maybe Supplies too, if only for that concession to modern pop that's actually a little bit better than I think anyone else is giving it credit, instead of trying to make a significant artistic statement, maybe go loose, maybe go light, this record probably would have held together better. But as it is, there are scattered moments on this project that click for me, but overall it's a myopic, fragmented, bafflingly awkward project where Justin Timberlake proves all the harder that you care about defining an idea of your cool, on average, the less cool that you'll turn out to be, only saved by some pretty damn solid grooves at the core. For me, 5 out of 10. Really just for hardcore fans at this point, but nowhere close to as bad as so many critics are claiming. This is not a terrible record. And while I doubt that the reception will puncture the unchallenged ego in Justin Timberlake's art that's been going on for too long, you know what? A slower fade towards the ground and being a little bit more honest with himself, that might just help in the long run. We'll see. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know you're gonna be a bunch of you who actually, I have no idea how many of you will go crazy over the record. Link to buys in the description below, but I got the poll up there. I'm curious where people are going to fall in this, because I think I'm being a lot nicer to it than pretty much everyone else has been, because, again, some of the grooves are really good, and there's a couple decent melodies and hooks here. Beyond that, not really. But anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in supporting my channel or contributing to my schedule, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there. If you want to see the schedule, it's on my Instagram, link below. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.